Well, on behalf of everyone in our studio, I want to welcome you to this little venue which we've named Circle6. Now, we are so appreciative of this remarkable space, which perhaps is a little unknown and discovered in the city. I actually didn't know this space existed before I walked in to see if we could move in. So it's really special for us to be here. And it's a beautiful space in this remarkable building. We're very keen to then share it. So we wanted to create this space, which we use internally for all of our team members and studio to get together. But once a month, we want to open it up for talks, discussions about the culture of design. And this is the first. So we're really pleased you could join us for this special evening, which we've called Memories of a Masterpiece.
This is Gerald Stone reporting to you from the top of Australia's highest building, Australia Square in downtown Sydney.
This is Gordon Bick reporting to you from the second highest building in Australia, the State Office Block, 34 stories high.
Hello, Gordon. How are things down there?
We may not be as big as you, but we're certainly practical.
What's that you say? I can't hear you.
So here this evening for this really informal gathering are two really special people who I'd like to introduce to you briefly now. Penelope Seidler, who needs absolutely no introduction, but I will give you one sentence. She became an architect after she married Harry Seidler in 1958. She worked closely with him until sadly he passed in 2006. And she still heads the practice today. And with Penelope is Colin Griffiths, who we're really honoured to have with us today. Colin began work with Harry Seidler in 1953, and he became a long-time associate of Seidler's and had a key role on Australia Square. So, Colin and Penelope, if you would like to come and join us here. Thank you. So Australia Square is an exceptional landmark project. It's a project of urban design, architecture, engineering and artwork. It started in 1961 and it was completed in 1967. And I have structured this initial discussion with Penelope and Colin into 4 parts. And we'll go through each of those shortly and reasonably quickly. And then we will open it up to comments, questions from everyone here. So part 1, I've called Beginnings. About 4 years before work started on Australia Square, Penelope, you met Harry in 1957.
That's correct.
Yeah. That wasn't a question. But, and you were studying law at the University of Sydney,
No,
arts law, arts, okay. And you were 18 or 19, yeah? And, yeah. So you got married in 1958.
On my 20th birthday.
Oh, when you were 20, yep.
Yes.
On your birthday.
On my birthday.
And you switched to study architecture also at the University of Sydney.
Great.
So I'm thinking that Harry must have been a pretty persuasive guy. He both talked you into marrying him and switching to architecture. So I'm wondering, was it that, or was it just a turn that was closer to your heart?
Yeah, oh, I can hear. It works. No, actually, I was a very conventional person at that stage, and it was I who persuaded him to marry me. Because, and Colin can back this up, he had seemingly endless flows of girlfriends, and I didn't like that, and so I said, well, we should get married because, listen, it's the 1950s and that's what you did. You got married, you didn't. It never occurred to me that you could just move in. So as for studying architecture, he encouraged me. He said, oh, you'd be very good at that. I can tell you're very, he exaggerated extremely, but I did because I realised that was his whole modus operandi. And so I did.
You did. And look, before work commenced on Australia Square, before design work commenced, I understand that you and Harry went on an international study tour to look at global benchmarks. Now that must have been a really exciting moment for two young modernists. You were 22, Harry was 36 or 37. How important was that tour and what stood out for you?
I think you're referring to the 1960 trip,
Yes.
which is actually the first trip for Australia Square.
Yes.
And Colin can elaborate on this.
Was Colin on that trip?
No, but he knows about it.
Yeah.
And Dusseldorp had come and said that he was. Colin, you just tell me what you told me a little earlier about Dusseldorp walking into the office. Yeah.
Well, good evening, everybody. The infirmity, by the way, is a result of this building. Now, I remember Dusseldorp coming in saying, well, the move was AMP had decided to build the building down at the quay, and they occupied a Victorian sandstone building where the Plaza building is. And he said, I want to go to the City Council and see if I can amalgamate this site, widen Bond Street, close off streets and get going. So we did. I think that initially there were only little plans, but in the discussion it was obvious that there was the opportunity, as a developer would have, if I can build a building on the Pitt Street side, I can start getting some money and then we can finalise that. And it took a long time to amalgamate the many properties that were on this whole site. But he obviously was persuasive also to the City Council. They agreed widening of Bond Street. There was a street called Hamilton Street which ran parallel to the Tang Stream, and it was a fairly straightforward amalgam, but there were a lot of properties, I think 19 or 20 properties that had to be amalgamated. But there was a chance to get going on. But but I think there was there was obviously some discussions, but Harry immediately said, oh no, we obviously need a tall building on here, and of course we have to need open space. And that was really how it started. It took some time before any preliminary designs were developed. And as you know, Harry was an extreme logician. You analysed the site, you did the setbacks. The only controls were height and the setbacks. I have to say to you poor current practitioners, we didn't have to do shadow diagrams or statements of environmental effect, but it was a reasonable negotiation. Of course, as you saw from there, the other buildings going on at the time were the State Office Block, but the AMP had really was the catalyst for the shift. But I also remember that Richardson Wrench were the real estate agents who were very close to Civil and Civic and Lend-Lease. They said, you can't build a building down there, we'll never be able to rent it. And of course, it's as is now that it's Martin Place centric, and we're now back to Martin Place centric these days even. but that was the. I think some little sketches were starting to be done, but I think it just flowed on from then. It took a long time to amalgamate the properties.
And Dusseldorp was very impressed with the developer in America, Zeckendorf, and who worked with I.M. Pei, and that's part of I.M. Pei's rise to fame, that he did many buildings for Zeckendorf. And so he said to Harry, well, you should work with Pei, he knows about these things. And it was in 1960, actually, that we went to New York, and Harry worked with Pei, but the building for design then went to Hunter Street. That was the first design, and there are many photographs and plans of that building. And of course, they could never get the Hunter Street buildings, so it was reduced. And by then, Dusseldorp said, oh, he's going to be too expensive, you just do it alone. Correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
No, you don't need
No, you
mine.
keep that. Yeah, keep those international architects out, huh? So that's great. You guys have answered questions I already had coming. But Conan, I wanted to just take you back to 1953 when you were 19 and you started working in Harry Seidler's studio. Yes. And at that point, he had completed an amazing series of houses on the North Shore, but nothing of any scale. And I was just wondering what actually attracted you to Seidler's studio?
Well, I guess I was obviously interested in modern architecture. I was in my second year at the Tech, which then became the University of New South Wales. But I was interested in, and Harry was very energetic around the city in talking about architecture. He organised exhibitions, he organised talks, and I was always used to go to those things. I think finally, I think at the time Don Gazzard was working with Harry, and Don was going overseas, and the word got around that he was looking for a skilled assistant. I thought I was the one for that. So I went to an interview in his little studio at Point Piper, the little one room, and he said, "All right, okay, I'll give you a chance." And he drove me back to the city, and I think he said, "On the way, I want to get some new tyres for my car." So we drove into the tyre place in Rushcutters Bay. We sat in the car talking. It was lifted up. The wheels were put on, and off we drove.
Was that the job interview?
That was the job interview. But I think I was, and I guess as you said, I worked for Harry for 27 years. Including this, which took 2 or 3 years of that time.
Yeah. So maybe we just move on to the second part, the actual design of the project, perhaps commencing in 1961, as I understand it, when Düsseldorf had finally assembled the blocks, pulled all of this together, and Harry Seidler was formally commissioned and began work. Now, the concept of a tower in a plaza was obviously a very decisive break with the traditional city, opening up the ground plane to light and air and public space. And it was a modern paradigm, modernist paradigm that Harry was clearly very passionate about. But a circular tower within that paradigm, combined with the low podium, was a masterstroke. Separated the tower, opened up the corners, and reached into the skyline in a sort of singular unidirectional form. But this circular form, columns pulled to the outside, is rational and efficiency driven, as you were talking about, Colin. It's an inside-out design, minimising surface area and maximising standardisation and repetition. Can you tell me which came first? Was there a primacy in any of this that Harry had in mind?
No, I think it came pretty early on, that the idea of a... well, the thing was that the developer wanted to put a building, start getting some money by building a building on the AMP site, which is the Pitt Street site.
The plaza, yeah.
The plaza building. And of course that was separated by the tank stream that ran through there. And he was very keen to get some options going. But I think the idea of the circular tower came pretty early. If anybody of you know the way Harry used to work, there was a certain logic. Even any project, a house project, there was 2 or 3 sheets of logic. This is where we start, this is how we go, these are the steps. And you come to that conclusion. So at the time, there wasn't much building around, but Harry was very keen to have a standalone tower. There were options studied with bases and things, but they were all rejected. Mm-hmm. It was cluttering up. And because up till then, all buildings up till the end of until the war and the post-war, all buildings were built to the street. There was no open space. And so this was the first breakthrough, though in the State Office Block did have some slight spaces. But to us it just came naturally. And I think it was certainly the logic that Harry was, what's the step, do this step, do these setbacks. And I think nothing much changed. The height was 560 feet, I can remember, and the dimensions. There weren't too many variations. It was the refinement of the central core and the perimeter structural thing that really stayed with us and reinforced completely by the nervy input.
I wanted to ask you a little more about the relationship with Düsseldorf, because Harry and Düsseldorf shared a great interest in construction system innovation, building fast, maximising repetition and prefabrication, and in bringing architecture and construction close together right at the beginning. And this seems fundamental to realising such a progressive and innovative project as this one. How was this manifest in the design process?
Well, before I pass back to Colin, Düsseldorf was a mastermind, and he was instinctive about people. And Harry had already had 3 successful buildings. This was long before Lend-Lease was formed, by the way. And he trusted him, sort of. He trusted him. And the relationship was sparky.
Right.
There was always an edge to it. And they each had, this sort of confrontational aspect to them, but respect. So now I'll pass back to Colin.
Düsseldorf was a very strong character. He was very, very clear about his relationships. And I certainly think that they obviously hit it off together. But I think that they were both keen to have product. Yeah, you don't muck around. And that's the way his organisation ran. It was completely systematic. There were specialists in all those disciplines, and but he himself was very approachable. I think I had to remind him who I was many times, but he was very clear about his intentions, and I don't think he particularly, you know, the organisation did a lot of pretty pedestrian buildings, huh? And that might have been the selection. But he was believed in management, a very clear view, and I think he developed management systems here with the CEOS, was it some institute of management. He was very, very clear about that, and he liked results. And I think all the buildings that we did with him, he was very clear about what his intentions were, and you responded, you performed. He was a performer, and was very clear about what his intentions were. But he was a very admirable character to deal with.
That's it's a key thing, the relationship, I think, between the client and the architect, and clearly, it's almost a patron, but then at the same time with very high expectations and discipline, and that integration of construction and the methodology that was going to make such an ambitious project affordable. That being at the forefront was clearly something that they held in common, and that also. Perhaps was perfectly aligned with the work of Pierluigi Nervi, for example, and his great interest in bringing that construction systems right to the very forefront. And it was Harry who brought in Nervi, as I understand it, a very innovative engineer.
Well, yes, the Pitt Street building, as you all know, the columns, which were designed in part to about the tank stream, to avoid the tank stream, but Harry was always feeling that they were rather clumsy and over-designed.
He wasn't involved in the plaza building,
No, he certainly was not, because as Colin said, that went up quite early, unair-conditioned, as buildings were in those days. It had 2 lots of louvers instead of 1 the way it is now. And so Harry said to Dusseldorp, now listen, if you really want the best building in the world, I should get advice, structural advice, and the person to do it is Pierluigi Nervi in Rome. And he convinced Dusseldorp, and so he went off to Rome in 1963. I didn't go because I was doing my final exams at the time. And by the way, it was there that he discovered Baroque architecture, which became his love in the world, of course. But maybe you can expand on that, Colin.
No, the plaza building, while it looks pretty pedestrian, in a sense, was income. The developer wants income. You've got a site there, sitting there, and you read it, and that was a simple building. It went up very quickly, but it was defined by the tank stream line, and that's why the columns were offset in part, but who knows what architects think. Dusseldorp was a great guy to work for, but he pushed you a little bit. He pushed and pushed and pushed, and I think that's how the buildings came to be refined. But the notion of the plaza on that site that went through various iterations. At one stage there was a great big bulky department store in a higher level, but that was short-lived. But the plaza and the 2 levels came pretty quickly. Of course, the level is between George and Pitt Street, and but things developed. Those obvious funny circles and things on the lower plaza, and the origin of the radial lines. It was always partly there. It was always there, but I think the The only difficulties we ever had was various project managers for civil and civic at the time were all fretting about how to pave it, and we wanted. And Harry came back with the Rome stones.
Yeah.
And I remember one project manager said, "What do you mean? Why don't we just put bitumen there?"
They still say
You can imagine the explosive reaction from Harry.
that. Yeah.
But it took its time and developed, but I think we made a few little mistakes. I think the stair from the plaza building to the upper plaza, to the plaza up to the top, was a bit too steep. But somebody took their eye off something for a minute. But Max Dupain solved that by taking that famous keyhole shot.
Yeah. So going back to then that first meeting between Nervi and Seidler, 1961. 63 was it? In Rome. In Rome. Okay.
In Rome, that's when he went to Rome, yeah.
Okay. So
And he stayed there, at least a month,
okay.
maybe 3 weeks. It seemed a month, yeah.
And so I was just thinking, Seidler was maybe 40 at that point,
What
or
year
even
is
less.
it? 63?
63 is 40, yeah. And Nervi would have been early 70s, right?
Yes, and he didn't speak English. He spoke Italian and French, and Harry spoke English and German. But Harry said there was no problem. They just drew with their pencils. He said we had instantaneous rapport.
Wow. That's a wonderful thing. And this was the first project they worked with together, but obviously a very...
Well, yes, it was the first, but not the last.
No, not the last.
And they developed a very good relationship.
Yeah, and Harry always stressed the important contribution that...
Absolutely. He refined the structure and the construction.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you one question, actually, while we're talking about that. So this ribbed ceiling that we're under now, actually, so came out of this great partnership between the two of them. But I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that it was Nervi who had these running in a directly straight line, and it was Harry who introduced that slight curve. Is that true or not true? You can tell me.
No. I think you most people associate straight lines with Harry, but no. Nervi, it was a Nervi solution.
So Nervi was the straight line, or the curve.
As you see here, there's the ribs don't come to the column because there's steel in the column, and you have to avoid it. So it's, the logic here is indisputable about the structure. But it was, and of course, because of this and the other thing, we bypassed this in the construction stage. The columns went further up, and we came back to this.
You came back to this.
Yes.
Okay.
Because there was a production.
Because it was slower. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But but as you can see, the amount of the steel in the columns going there, and there's steel from this slab, and it just didn't. It made sense to put this thing
connect into the ring bank. Yeah, because there's a very slight, beautiful curve on those ribs that come out in a radial form. Gave us a little bit of a problem as we were putting up, but we greatly appreciated it. Also, I wanted to ask one question, coming to the artworks of the project, in particular the Calder by Alexander Calder, crossblades that sits out the front, and knowing how important, and of course the Gaussian tapestries as well, but knowing how important the integration of artwork was to Harry, I was wondering, at what point did those conversations start with Calder?
Well, later actually, but the slides that you may see, I don't know if you've seen it yet, the original, slide with the model,
Yeah,
1965.
there's a maquette in it, doesn't it?
It has a maquette in
Yeah.
it, and that is Clement Meadmore.
Okay.
And that he
Okay.
was our architect of choice to do the sculpture, because Harry always put art in the initial conception, whether it came off or not. And it was before Clement Meadmore left Australia to go to America, where he had a significant career, but it took him a few years in America to establish that. And we were quite happy with that artwork, but when he got to America, he changed completely. And then he sent back drawings and a little model of his new interpretation, which I don't think anybody particularly liked. Do you remember that, Colin? No. It's not like the work that he's famous for. It was in between that side. And at that time, Dusseldorp said, because this took a few years, he said, no, you can't have that. And you must select the best that there is. And we went around the world interviewing the best. We went to Henry Moore, we went to Isamu Noguchi, and Calder we ended up at Harry Bartoya. There were so many wonderful artists that we saw, but we were both enamoured with Calder, and I think we were very pleased with the result.
Good choice.
But, you know, Clement Meadmore didn't forgive us for years, but he did in the end. We had a wonderful dinner in New York, and he said, yes, he realised that the second proposal was not acceptable. And it was before he developed the idiom that he's so famous for. So it is an interesting story. Yeah.
It is. And I wanted to also ask you directly about this space we're in now, because putting a 4.5 metre lofty exhibition space on the first floor of a tower like this is a very unusual thing to do. How did that come about?
You mentioned Harry being persuasive.
Yeah, I figured it was him. Yeah.
It was entirely architectural
Yeah.
conceit. We wanted to graduate. You wanted to graduate.
Yeah.
But that's the way it goes. We did all that.
Look, we're particularly grateful to him. And also, look, this is a radical proposal, transforming a kind of a whole way of thinking about the city. But was it hard to get approved? I mean, the consolidation of the blocks, you went through that, the council were supportive of that. But the tower concept, was that challenging for the city, or?
No, I don't think at all. I think it was, I think, again, we talk about people being persuasive. I think in all the projects, or even in the smallest houses, Harry did a series of sheets of logic. We start with this, these are the steps, these are the steps. Sometimes it might have been reinvented, but when you think at this speed, but when you draw at another. And all those, even in the smallest houses, had a little 2 or 3 sheets of this is why we're doing it, this is why we're doing it, this is why we're doing it. And I think the sitting down on this site, the given was there was to be a building to get some income going down there, and then we took our time to develop this. It didn't go to too many variations. I think the circle came pretty much. It might have been a square, and it's got the corners chopped off, and suddenly the square became.
So maybe we just move on to construction now. And the Plaza building came first. We've talked about that. Yeah. So and then followed by the tower. And I think the Plaza building, it's a great foil to the tower. Actually, holds the street alignment. It's almost a perfect relationship with the tower. But Colin, I wanted to ask you first. What was your role on this project during construction?
As you probably most of you know, I went to work with Harry when I was a second year tech student. I finished 2 years and I went to Harry I think Don Gazzard had worked with him and gone overseas, and the word was he was looking for a senior assistant. So at the age of 18 or 19, I said, here I am. And that's how we started. I think we never really had much of an argument until much later. and it wasn't an argument, it was just a difference. And both of us took a silly line that way and that way.
And on Australia Square, your role?
Oh, I did at the time there was the Seidler office with Harry and me. And by that time we had moved. We were getting bigger jobs, and we moved into Celtic's house, which was Lebanese Civil and Civics first.
We'd really love to hear what you say. If you hold the microphone close.
It doesn't matter what I say. Literally, Civil and Civics' first big building was Celtic's house,
Yes.
which is down in Kent Street. And when we were getting some work, we moved from Harry's studio.
We moved because I wasn't going to get married and have the office in the bedroom. It was a one-room apartment, as you know, admittedly on the waterfront at Point Piper, but it was a basement apartment and one room. So I said, no, I can't have the office in the bedroom.
So it's, you've thrown off what I was talking about. No, give me a clue. Help me.
Well, it's you and Harry, and you clearly had a key role in this project.
What did you do on the tower?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah.
I drew.
You drew it. Yeah.
And I can still tell you that the diameter is 134 foot 7. The core is 30.1 metres, and the top is 625. I can still remember those things. And of course, what I learned when I was in the Harry's studio in Point Piper, there was no layout space. So you did a drawing and you record all that, and then you started another drawing, and you had no reference. So my technique was to remember everything.
Yeah. You still got it, Colin?
Yes, sort of.
So, and Penelope, you were a student of architecture. You graduated 64, right?
I graduated at the end of 63, yeah.
Okay. Just as the tower started, construction on the tower. What was your role on this project, beyond, of course, your close working partnership with Harry?
I don't think I had any role except to just listen. Well, I don't know what my role was, but it was very much Colin and Harry doing the whole thing. And it was very exciting because there was a floor every, how many days? How many days between floors? One floor a week. You know, it was very exciting. And I think you should talk about when it was going up. There is, yes, that's the show, which shows not only the, it shows the three, can you see the...
No, well, the advantage of this thing is that all the beams from the core to are all the same. Everything's, it's a complete repetition of 20 units. So it was very systematic, and it went like that.
Yeah, the speed of construction was incredible.
And it was aimed at one floor a week, but underlying that was the organisation of the Civil and Civic. They had methods engineers. There were the full service engineers, and there was complete interaction all the way, plumbers and everybody, and that was the great advantage of that. While it was I used to come into the site. They had established a site office as soon as there was space in the basement, and I used to come in once or twice a week and work out what documents were needed so that we could draw them and keep ahead of it. And I remember that they certainly had they owned a lightweight aggregate company. They had a complete reliable source of support. And And I think I would join the site meetings on 1 day a week or 2 days a week, early in the morning, say what drawings do we need, what do we need, how could we keep ahead. And I remember doing the one sheet of, I think that even the documents to the City Council were so simple. There was 1 or 2 sheets and calculations, and no shadow diagrams, no statement of environmental effects.
Let me say that the contract between the architect and the client was 1 page.
Yeah, it's a bit longer now. And
Yeah.
I'd now just like to move on to what we just called retrospect for a moment, because the tower was completed, Australia Square was completed in 1967. It was the world's tallest lightweight concrete building. It marked a real turning point in Sydney's architectural history, and it brought world-class modernism to Australia. And I walk around this building. I walk in from George Street onto this low-slung plinth, look up at the tower, go down to the plaza, the amazing circular food court, maybe even go up to the top at the revolving restaurant. And I try to imagine it's 1967. And there was nothing else like it. I mean, it must have felt like the future had arrived in Sydney. And I was wondering if I could ask you, what was it like when it opened? What was the reception? How did people respond?
I think people liked it, didn't they, Colin?
Yes, well, some of us did. I should just go back. The Lend-Lease, Civil and Civic Lend-Lease were developing a very close-knit set of consultants. They at one stage owned a real estate agency called Richardson and Wrench. And when Dusseldorp said, I'm going to build this building down here, they said, impossible, we'll never rent it. We were Martin Place focused, and how can you possibly let the space so many blocks away from the thing? And that was the advice they gave. But I think that the credit to Dusseldorp, he thought many steps ahead of most of us.
And looking back now on this enduring masterpiece, can I ask you both, what stands out most in your memory about this project?
Well, it was, people liked it. It was I think it was a success and a financial success. I know that Dusseldorp couldn't get the money here. He had to go to London to get it. No one would touch it here. And it proved to be a financial success. And then, of course, he started Lend-Lease. And we were foolish enough not to come in on the original act, but we didn't. And I mean, it was the same year our house was finished, actually, so it was a good time. And that was before everybody started hating everything new, and rebelling and blaming Harry Seidler for all the ills of Sydney. So, his reputation was quite good then. And before it went bad, but I'm delighted to say I think it's coming back. Yeah.
I think it is. And Colin, can I ask you, looking back, what is your most memorable moment from this project?
Oh, I should tell you some secrets. Harry hated heights. Whenever we used to come, and it was, we used to come and go in the lift up to the construction levels. Harry would stay back at the core, and we would go to the front. But he would. I think he was really worried about that. But that didn't stop him from reaching for the sky, did it?
No. Okay, well, thank you so much, both of you. And now I'd just like to open up for questions from anyone here. James Werrick.
Yes, thank you so much, Penelope and Cole. What a wonderful experience it is to be here in this space. It's not really a question, it's really a comment. To me, this building, I've loved it from the very beginning, and I believe it is really the greatest tower of our city. I think that Seidler office did some other magnificent work, but this stands alone as an amazing achievement of its time, and its clarity and its perfection is something quite special. I think there are a couple of things I'd just like to mention. First of all, I think when it was built, if not for a very long time, it was the highest concrete framed tower in the world. And so that is in itself an extraordinary achievement, considering the type of construction that was happening in other cities, the steel frame construction. I think the other important thing is in terms of urban design, that the idea of a tower in a plaza has had many problematic examples in the world, but never this one. And that, I think, is an absolute work of genius, to think of the flow of people from Wynyard Station down through the food court out to the plaza, then into what later became much more of the financial centre than certainly was when the project was conceived. And then the third thing I'd like to mention is the idea of this level and the special Nervi solution to be able to carry higher weights at this level of the building for what was conceived as a great exhibition space for the city, for trade shows and so on. And I seem to remember I came for at least one of them in the late 60s.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'd like to say is that it's already been mentioned how special the trips overseas were in the experience and the resolution of possibilities for Sydney. And I'd like to, in fact, honour Paolo Strachey and the beautiful work that he has done in connecting the historical record of Nervi and Harry Seidler. And we remember that, in fact, it starts in 1956. And so, on that amazing trip that Harry did with Peter Miller from Miller, Milston and Ferris, he went to Rome to see Nervi. He was not there. And then they were researching all sorts of concrete applications, like lift slab concrete and so on, and went to Bergamo to the great Italian research centre for concrete, but then met up with Marcel Breuer and Nervi in Paris in 1956. So Harry Seidler was out there knowing all about Nervi long before this project came. And of course the collaboration was beautiful. Look at it. What can you say?
Thank you.
They didn't meet in Rome because Nervi was in Paris.
Yes.
But Harry was hosted by the office.
He hosted by the office.
Yes. And the office actually took Harry on a tour to show all the stuff that the Nervi office was doing in Rome at that point, which was the Palazzetto of the Sport, which was the masterpiece of the Nervi system and the Nervi style, basically. And the Nervi system was then adopted here in Australia Square. So it was a magic serendipity, actually, really like.
He came to Sydney, yes?
Never.
Never.
It was too old. We invited him a few times, also the...
Okay, but he never actually came.
I'm too old to travel, so... He was traveling from Rome to New York by saying, I can't afford like a trip to...
They still say that. It's a long way to come.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for that contribution. Any other questions, comments?
That's the maple.
Yeah.
The early maple.
Yeah, that's a beautiful model.
Yeah, well, that's the earliest model.
Yeah.
And Richard, and also add this, just to... So the curve, there is a curve, a tangential curve here, but there were 4 options actually for the ceiling.
Yeah.
And one option was with a curve.
Yes.
The other option was with an S shape. And the third option was the S, but with the column basically standing on the 2 ribs.
Okay.
The second option was the column kind of like in the middle of the panel,
Yep.
as you see this now. The third option was the S with the column standing on the rib, and the fourth option was the S with the column standing in the middle of the panel. So actually Nervi selected, because then they worked together. The Nervi had to leave and he went to Washington in New York because he was working on the bus station. He was living in New York. Then he came back and Harry stayed in the office. Then he came back, there was these 4 options, and Nervi selected option with the S and with the column in that position.
Okay.
But the point is that realizing the S was too expensive here in Australia, and they said, okay, let's realize the gentle curve, only the gentle curve, but with the column disconnected from grids. And this was a very kind of a pedagogical-like choice from Nervi, because in this way you can actually show that there is a slab, a conference grid slab, that is floating on a column.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would perceive this as a column and a beam connecting the column and the core. In this case, what you see is a beautiful slab
Floating.
floating.
Yeah, it's very decisive and somewhat unexpected.
Very decisive. Very decisive.
And by the way, the exhibition that you might have seen on some of the slides was the exhibition of the Power collection after Power left his collection to the Sydney University, and it was designed by Robin Boyd. The exhibition was designed by Robin Boyd.
Yes. Yeah, a beautiful exhibition. Yeah, we have some photos of that. Yeah. Other questions? Annie Hensley.
I have a little one, which is we can move from the architectural to Sydney's collective memory, which was the Summit restaurant at the top. I think anyone who wanted to have the fanciest dinner in Sydney went to the Summit. Was that a Düsseldorf decision? How did that come about, the restaurant?
How did the round restaurant come about?
I think there was movement around the world for high restaurants, circular restaurants in world fairs and so on. But I think it was pretty early, well, even though the concept of the tower came quickly, the refinement of what was in, and there was an observation deck above the restaurant, and there were some unfortunate consequences of that, and it was closed down. But I just seeing the Calder there, I remember Harry telling me that when Calder said, "Can I get one of the legs come over the thing into the street?" And he said, "No, we can't do that." Now you can, because they've closed off Bond Street to allow that thing. Somebody knew something.
Yes.
In the photographs, we've seen the Le Corbusier and Vasarely tapestries, and we now have the wonderful soul width. How did you and Harry make the decision?
Well, when we went on that magical tour to select the art in 1965, we were looking for something that would take the curve, and we never really came across an artist that we thought was appropriate, but the tapestries obviously take the curve, and Harry was enamoured with the Corbusier and the Vasarely to a limited extent, but it worked. And finally they wanted to sell it, and they did sell it, and happily it's at Sydney, the Conservatorium, if anybody wants to look at it, the Conservatorium of Music. And Sol LeWitt, it was just a dream that Harry said to him, it'd be nice would you do something? And when he was here for a Caldor project, and he produced what I think sings, and Harry was thrilled with it. I mean, absolutely thrilled, in a way that he wasn't as enamoured with the tapestries. I mean, of course, he liked the tapestries, but I think the Sol LeWitt, it just sings.
The scale is amazing. Yeah. Yes, Bridget.
A photograph came up with beautiful, colourful, playful umbrellas in the plaza.
Oh.
And I've often dreamt of one back. They're like an artful composition in their own right. Was that Harry's idea? Does it relate to
Could you hear that? You didn't hear it? The play?
The umbrellas, and they're so incredibly interesting because you look down.
Well, those were the early photos of the plaza, You remember the umbrella? Well, La Plaza, I mean, we're still not happy about everything there, but it's a very popular place, and it's undergone several iterations. I'm not sure. Were the umbrellas?
We also should give Dusseldorp credit, because when the plaza came up, he said, "It's too windy, it's going to be windy. What are you going to do about it?" So we came up with the idea of those curved walls, which helped contain the space. But it was really an insight that he had, because I guess he was always affectionately associated with the building. And he was wanting people to enjoy it. And those two curved walls with some seating and lighting were really Dusseldorp's sort of contribution.
Any final question? Philip?
The permanent formwork of the columns which taper, did you draw every level and every taper?
I did a set of, during the development even, there was always some discussion within the consultant team of Lindley's engineers and methods engineers about how we were going to do it. I think I only ever did one set of drawings of the shapes of the tower and the elevations, but Monia Concrete was the contractor, and they fully developed the whole technique. I remember having to go out to Monia's yard and approve, of course there were only 20 columns, and we had to have 20 good columns. And I had to go out regularly and inspect and approve the ones to be delivered. But we managed, with some very clever technicians out there, we managed to do little patches and things. But it was the nervy concept was then translated by the Monia company, and so there's credit in all cases. As we know in the construction industry, there's no one, anybody in an architectural office. Somehow everybody has a contribution, everybody makes a contribution.
Thank you.
I think the Monia engineers were excellent.
Look, I would like to close out this discussion with a quote from Philip Drew. And I thought maybe Philip was here tonight, or maybe not, maybe he didn't make it. And I quote, "Seidler did not introduce modern architecture to Australia. It reached Australia well ahead of him in the mid-1930s. Modern architecture was not new. It was Seidler's mixture of American modernism, his closeness to the fountainhead, the lack of any colonial inflections, and the absence of compromise, which shocked and excited Australians. Its foreignness, the beauty of its forms, was undiluted by historic residues or other stylistic inputs. The work possessed a futuristic quality. It seemed to many that they were seeing the future. It was not quite real, like travelling in time. Australians were astonished." Thank you, Penelope and Colin.